All right, welcome back to our 2015 NCAA Tournament bracket preview for Madness Breakdown. Today we are previewing the East region, and joining me is Trent from Oklahoma. We have NC State represented by Zach, and we have Villanova represented by Frank. Gentlemen, welcome. And let's go to Trent first to talk about Oklahoma's matchup against Albany and how the two editors decided that Oklahoma would be the victor.
Well, after pretty lengthy discussion, we decided that in the end, we think that Oklahoma's probably going to catch the Great Danes off guard with their transition game. Oklahoma is one of the best transition teams in the country. I mean, our offense, our flow in the offense is very much dictated by our transition game. And if you're not used to playing Oklahoma, it can kind of take teams off guard because OU picks their spots very, very well on the floor. Where Albany might give us issues, though, is in the rebounding department. Albany is the best rebounding team in the America East Conference. Their senior forward, Sam Rowley, actually just became the conference's all-time leading rebounder.
Okay, but do you think that your size and athleticism is enough to overcompensate for that?
Yes, I feel like it is. We're we have a lot of athletic guards. Number 11, Isaiah Cousins, very athletic slasher, and we got obviously Buddy Hield, who also can score in a variety of ways. So yeah, I think overall our athleticism, especially with our guards, will be more enough to overcome that.
All right, thanks for that. Now let's move on to Zach at NC State. He has a tough matchup against LSU. Where do you see NC State and the Wolf Pack coming off there?
Yeah, that's like you said, definitely a tough matchup. NC State at an 8 seed, LSU got knocked down maybe a little bit lower than they should have been if they hadn't have gotten dispatched early by Auburn. Two great teams going at it. When you look at LSU, you see two big men, Martin and Mackey, both averaging about 16 and 9 in the interior. And when you look at NC State, you look at the three members of their backcourt, Trevor Lacey, averaging about 16, Anthony Cat Barber, who's one of the speediest players that I've ever seen, averaging about 16 points over his last 11 games, and Ralston Turner, actually a former LSU Tiger, who can shoot lights out when he's hot, but when he's off, he's off. It's really just kind of a streaky thing for him. NC State, they don't have a lot of size. Our two tallest players are 6'9", but neither of them start. We start 2 6'8" players in the interior. But Coach Gottfried has really incorporated a zone defense that's helped us shut down other superior post players like Dukes Jalil Okafor, Rakeem Christmas at Syracuse, and Montrezl Harrell at Louisville. One thing that does give us trouble is a high-low game that Louisville might, or that LSU might throw at us with its two big men. But the way Anthony Cat Barber's been playing of late, and Trevor Lacey's just excellent basketball IQ, I think that our guards can help us overcome this battle, just like we've muscled our way past a lot of other really good teams in the past, like Duke and Chapel Hill.
Okay, thank you for that, and we'll return to that a little bit later. Now let's head it up over to Villanova and Frank. And sitting pretty at 32-2 there. Seems like Lafayette doesn't present much of a challenge.
Yeah, I think what makes this matchup really unique as far as 1 seeds versus 16 seeds go is that Lafayette's coach, Fran O'Hanlon, actually is a former Villanova. He's like a grad. He's got a really good relationship with our head coach, Jay Wright. We talked to Jay a little earlier today at our meeting day, and Jay said he had a dialogue with the Lafayette coach, and they've been going back and forth a little bit this week. But actually, last year we played Lafayette down here in the pavilion, and they gave us a little bit of a game for the first half and into the second half. So a lot of the players here, you know, Pinkston, Hilliard, Josh Hart, those guys are all pretty cognizant of what's going on with this Lafayette team. They're aware that this team is a year older, a year stronger, a year better, and I think we're really taking that into consideration while we prepare for them. So with that being said, I think you know, Jay has said that this is one of his most coachable teams he's ever had. This is the first year we're going under Coach Wright, going into the tournament following a victory. It's his first Big East tournament win, so he said that makes a big difference in preparations. As far as the actual matchup goes, I think the one thing that we've hung our hat on all year is balance. We go 8 deep with our 5 starters, three guys who are your traditional guards. Javon Pinkston then is like a little bit of an undersized power forward, but he's more athletic than a lot of guys that he's matched up against. And then Daniel Ochefu, who most people who have been following the team for a few years have just been raving about his improvement on the offensive end of the ball. He's a 6'11" junior forward. He'll probably be more of like a defensive guy if he reaches the NBA. But at this point, his strides that he's made on the offensive end have just added a whole other dimension to the team, and they have people really excited about potential matchups with bigger teams where I think we've faltered in the past. Now Chefu's consistency allows us to bring size and like a lot more skill on that side of the ball, which is going to help down low against most teams in the tournament, especially in the first round against Lafayette.
Okay, before we bring Zach back in, let's talk about those troubles that you've had with size and a potential matchup with LSU, how you would see that going down.
Yeah, I think that it did give us a little bit of trouble earlier in the season against one of our 2.
Lost him for just a second there.
Hey, I'm back.
All right, nice.
Sorry.
All good. Keep it rolling, baby.
All right. Yeah, so like I was saying, one of our 2 losses earlier in the year was that blowout to Georgetown. The biggest thing that hurt us there was Ochefu and Pinkston got into some foul trouble early on, and where our depth helps us, it also hurts us because we lack depth and size. Josh Hart off the bench is 6'5". Phil Booth off the bench is 6'3". He's a freshman point guard, and Chris Jenkins is our biggest guy off the bench at 6'6", 240. So he's a little bit of more of a linebacker build, if you will. So in terms of a matchup down the road, I think the biggest thing, and both Javon and Ochefu have improved on this, is staying on the court. Jay has his rotation. He has his things that he does with the lineup. And a few of our other writers and radio personalities noticed during the Big East tournament, we ran a lineup with Ochefu, Pinkston, Hart, Jenkins, and Hilliard, which we think is our tallest lineup. So we are predicting a little bit that Jay was experimenting with that in knowing that he's going to need some size down the road in the tournament. So I would look for tweaking the lineup a little bit and getting guys like that out there. It's good to have the guys like Arcidiacono and Booth, but they just lack the size, especially when you run into teams with more length at the guard position. So, yeah, that's what I would say as far as matching up with bigger teams like LSU, definitely.
Okay. And then let's give you a breather here. Zach, now should NC State advance like we might be projecting there, it sounds like, how do you see yourselves prepared to take on Villanova?
Whew, man.
Yeah, it's not easy.
The drawback of getting a highest seed as 8 is having to play a number 1 seed in the 3rd round. Villanova is an excellent team, definitely very deep, and contrasting to that is NC State. I mean, at the beginning of the year, we have 10 solid players in our lineup, 10 players that could probably get decent minutes at any mid-major school. But Coach Godfrey doesn't like big lineups. Recently, we've cut down to a 7-man rotation, and I think Barber, Lacey, and Turner, our 3 starting guards, have all been averaging 35 minutes. Now, while they're reliable, and while that is a good thing because Lacey and Barber bring the intelligence and quickness, and Lacey brings his three-point shooting, Turner brings his three-point shooting, which can be really deadly to teams. It also limits us when these 3 guys aren't going. So if fatigue won't be a factor, I don't think, as we've seen many times in other NC State games. But where I think that Villanova will get us, like Frank said, is with that improved depth in the interior. We have a 3 big man rotation right now with our 2 6'8" starters. One's a freshman, Malik Abu, and then another is Leonard Freeman. He's a fierce rebounder, not really much on the offensive end. And on the bench we have 6'9" BJ Anya, and Anya's has got a lot of news whenever he came into the NCAA because he has a 7'9" wingspan, which I think is the largest in the college game right now. Now these 3 guys, while they've been able to provide some solid minutes and make some defensive stops when necessary, the offense just sometimes isn't there. And when the big men aren't producing, that shortens things up for the guards. Villanova is just a very complete team. And while NC State tries to be, sometimes our skill is really guard heavy. And I think while that's, bolstered us through a lot of games, it can also be our downfall in the end. At the ACC tournament, when we played Duke, they ran a zone where they denied the ball from Lacey and Barber once they passed it off, and we had absolutely no answer. And I think Villanova is a very capable team. Villanova is a team that can adjust very well. While we've played giant killer in the past, like I've said, against Duke, UNC, at Louisville, it's going to be very difficult to overcome Villanova. They're a really talented team, absolutely.
Okay. Frank, are you there? Frank's having a little bit of technical difficulties. So let's try and put into perspective here this NC State LSU game, because I think we're a little bit hung up on that. And is there any major over concern that just tells you in your gut that LSU's going to take it?
Yeah, like I said earlier, whenever we run our zone, while we've been working on it and while we've been running it through the year, UNC really exposed us at one point when they played here at NC State. They ran Kennedy Meeks, their center, at the free throw line, and he's an excellent interior passer, throwing it down to Bryce Johnson on the block, and that was really tearing up our zone, giving us trouble. So if LSU can use their 2 bigs, Martin and Mickey, to find gaps in our zone, and Ralston Turner, who sometimes is the difference in close games like that, isn't hitting like he normally does, then things could be headed downhill pretty quickly for NC State.
Okay. This is the first matchup that we've had where we haven't been able to provide an answer for you on who's going to win, because we went through that Midwest, and I think only Buffalo, West Virginia, we were a little bit hung up on, but we ultimately went with West Virginia. So I'm going to try and get LSU's editor on, and maybe we'll have a follow-up tomorrow. But I'd say that in both scenarios, Frank, that Villanova would be the victor moving on to the Sweet 16. Yeah.
Over, like, winning in the 3rd round and moving on?
Yeah, going into the Sweet 16, excuse me, passing NC State or LSU.
Yeah, actually, so we were looking at the bracket, and we think that the Northern Iowa situation is really interesting to us because from the Big East and having seen Georgetown play a few times, although they beat us, they're very inconsistent, and so we felt that them getting a 4 and Northern Iowa being stuck at a 5 was very it was very interesting to us, and so I think that if we were to see Northern Iowa in the Sweet 16, that could be a dangerous matchup because they're going to be playing with a lot. They had a lot to prove going into this, coming from a lesser-known conference, similar to a Wichita State. I think it's the same conference. So they had a lot to prove to begin with, and now when they kind of get stuck with a 5 seed and they see a lot of teams ahead of them that maybe necessarily shouldn't be in any, like in my opinion or in someone else's or in theirs, they're going to be coming in with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, which is always dangerous. And then, of course, Louisville. I think a lot of us here at Villanova are kind of rooting for that matchup to take place, an old Big East rivalry. And I think, I honestly have not seen a lot of Northern Iowa this year, but I've watched Louisville, and I think we would match up we would match up pretty well against them. Harrell he's a beast down low. He's probably would be the most physical big that we faced all year. I don't know about the best. Stainbrook in Xavier, I'm not going to say he's better than Harrell, but he's a different kind of player. He presents a different kind of challenge, and I think to this point he's probably been the biggest challenge for our bigs. But yeah, in the Sweet 16, I would say either one of those teams would give us a reasonable shot. I'm trying to think. I don't have a bracket in front of me, but potential, if Louisville or UNI were to be upset, I'm not sure who we would face then. But
UNI is playing against Wyoming, and Louisville is playing against UC Irvine. We have Louisville moving on there, and the UNI-Wyoming one is still at large because there are some doubts. I've watched the Mountain West all year, and Wyoming does get on a little bit of roll and it has some of the ingredients to upset UNI. I'm not promising that, especially against a 3-loss team, although you got to put that in perspective because of their conference, of course. But in a situation where you play Louisville, what sounds like we're getting at is that Villanova would be a W. So for bracket pickers who are choosing Louisville to get there, you would want to circle in Villanova over them. Oh, we just lost him for a second there. We'll see if we can come back in. But that's what did seem like there is that Villanova, if you are picking Louisville to get that far, you want to go with. Oh, there he is. Did you catch the tail end of that question there?
No, something about Louisville.
Yeah, if people who are filling out their brackets were picking Louisville to advance into a matchup with Villanova, that we're advising that you would take Villanova in that situation.
Yeah, I think my argument for Villanova in most matchups is going to be pretty similar in that experience and physicality and coaching means so much, especially when you get down to later rounds in championship tournaments like this. We have guys, every guy in our starting lineup has been in this tournament before, and 2 guys off the bench. And, that's the case for a lot of teams, but I think the experience that we bring to the table is tough to match up against. Physicality and athleticism is one thing, and we do have some of that. We have a lot of it, actually, especially off the bench, which, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I think that is our biggest strength, and I think that's what would give us the edge against Louisville.
Okay. Before we let you go here, because we don't really have anything for you after that, how far do you personally have Villanova advancing?
Personally, I've been
Homer and non-Homer.
So 2 years ago when we played North Carolina, I picked North Carolina to beat us in the first round. So I am not too much of a homer. I have I figured this year, I honestly think our window is widest open this year. And so I thought to myself while filling out the bracket, if I'm going to take Villanova to the Final Four, that's tough to argue. When we're sitting at an 8 seed or 9 seed 2 years ago, and then last year as a 2, that was an unproven 2, a little shaky coming off the loss to Seton Hall last year. So there were a lot of arguments against taking us. This year, there are the common arguments that have been around all season, but at this point, I feel like I'm pretty comfortable taking them to the Final Four. And then, once we get them there, personally, once we get there, we might as well take them in to get throttled by Kentucky, most likely. So, but that's a whole discussion for another day.
Yes, it is, and we will have a separate Final Four preview video, and that should be taking place tomorrow night. All the videos that we're doing for our brackets, we will be distributing out on Wednesday for all of you. So if you're just seeing this and it's Wednesday, it's because somebody was putting in the work on Twitter. So shout out to these gentlemen here. Frank, thank you very much for your time. Any closing thoughts on the region and the bracket as a whole?
I think there's a lot of interesting potential matchups that could emerge, but as always, there's those Cinderella. Have you talked about Cinderellas at all, or is that another?
They're always open for discussion. We haven't really had an excuse to go there yet because that seems more like the West and South regions.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. There's potential for those all over the place, but actually, when looking at it this morning, it seemed like there was less potential upsets this season. So we'll see, though. You always get those 14s and 13s who make it out into the second and third round. So I think it's always an exciting time of year, and I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, thank you again very much for your time. And we're going to switch over now to Zach at NC State. Based on all the information that you just heard on Villanova, has that changed your mind at all on your matchup against them? Was there anything that he missed, or has he got it all covered?
Oh man, I think he's pretty much got it covered. I mean, don't get me wrong, NC State has had a great year. They made it to the tournament for 4 straight years. Coach Godfrey, he's made it to the tournament in each of his first 4 years with the team. The first to do that since Roy Williams at UNC. So I mean, overall, this season's been a success. It'd be the icing on the cake if we could get a win against LSU. But when it comes to Villanova, I mean, it's going to be a really tough game, and I personally, I just can't see it.
All right, so there you have it. We have Villanova at least advancing to the Sweet 16. We're advising you to take that. NC State against LSU. A little bit of toss-up, but if NC State does advance, either way, the team's going to lose to Nova. That's what we got down to. We're going to move south down the ladder a little bit now to Oklahoma, to Trent, who's been patiently waiting for us to get to him. Trent, sorry that Providence's editor can't be here tonight. He had some important matter, but how do you match up against those Friars?
To be honest, I don't really know a whole lot about Providence yet because we have the Big East really didn't get a lot of airtime this year. And of course, not what it normally gets. So
right.
From what I heard, Providence has a really good core of guards. They have a kid named Chris Dunn, 6'3" point guard, who's projected to be probably a first-round draft pick this year in the NBA. He averages about 16 points per game, 7 assists per game. Him against Isaiah Cousins, OU's 6'3" shooting guard, I think would be a really interesting matchup. But yeah, that's about all I got for that matchup. Yeah, I'm sorry, I actually do not know a whole lot about Providence.
Right. So basically, that seems like all we could really offer to everyone today. We're going to try and work on getting some of the other teams to contribute. Belmont, though, is a wrap against Virginia. That is for certain. If anybody wants to contribute anything right now, if they think they have insight on Michigan State, Georgia, or Virginia and their chances to advance, you're more than welcome to unmute now and talk about that.
Yeah. So I saw NC State play Virginia twice this year, and I know what they're capable of when they're at full strength, and it's pretty scary when you see all those guys working together, just shutting people down on defense and being efficient on offense. And then I saw the Virginia that, not really completely healthy, with Justin Anderson's hand still being an issue. And I saw him drop a game to UNC in the ACC tournament like that. So I think that Michigan State has a pretty decent chance if Justin Anderson's not completely healthy and Virginia, shows up like they did in the ACC tournament. But at the same time, if they're at full strength, they could go as far as the Final Four. I mean, Virginia's going to be really interesting to watch in this tournament.
All right. And then Trent, anything else?
Yeah, I think the potential third-round matchup of Michigan State and Virginia, I think, is really, really interesting. Because with Michigan State, obviously I don't think this is Tom Izzo's most talented team, but it's probably one of his most scrappy teams and one of his toughest teams, I think. Right. I mean, because I feel like they really overachieved this year in the Big Ten. So I think that'd be a really interesting matchup with Virginia. We all know obviously what Virginia can do, especially on the defensive end. But yeah, it's just one of the many great matchups I think in the East region.
All right. Well, everyone, we hope that we were able to provide at least a little bit of clarity on that top half section of the East. Again, we're going with Nova, NC State, and where else? Louisville, Providence, Oklahoma, and Virginia are for sure locks to move on to the third round. The rest of the games, sorry, it's up to you. Good luck like everybody else. On behalf of Trent, and Zach, and Frank, I want to thank you for watching, and have a good one.